Everybody, and welcome back to Where Credit is Due, a podcast from CRF. It is great to have you with us. We have an absolutely fantastic topic for you today. Today, we're going to talk about why senior credit talent is harder to replace than executives think. Mike and I got some great dialogue, and Mike, I know you got some super thoughts on this, so I just say let's get right to it because it's a fantastic topic. We hear it all the time, right? Executive leaves, credit executive leaves, and what does senior management say? We'll backfill the role. Like senior credit talent is just another seat you can fill on a dime. Let's move on. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, right. On paper, man, it looks simple. Post a job, hire someone with 15 years experience, problem solved. In reality, not even close, Matt.
And the risk doesn't show up in day one, does it? Right? You can remove somebody, it's going to take time. It really shows up later in this role. And it shows up when there are things like cash flow needs, when disputes arise, and suddenly nobody can explain what's happening. It's not like you can just go and backfill these roles. And there's some reasons behind that.
Yeah, it's one of those executive misconceptions. There's this long-standing belief that credit is a process function. Policies, limits, approvals, almost mechanical. We both know it's not like some of the other functions that the organization owns the rules to. It's much more prescriptive, and you really have to understand your customers.
Yeah, it's back to the art and science. I think you nailed it, right? It's not a simple process that you can follow like some of the other fields out there. Maybe it's accounting or maybe it's accounts payable where it's really process driven. But the reality is it's about judgment, isn't it? Right? So the role is about judgment all the time. It's a pattern recognition type role. It's knowing when something doesn't feel right, even though the data may say that it is. It's about that judgment. And I'd also add that it's relationship based and it has to align with the goals and objectives of your business.
Exactly. You can replace a title in 30 days, but you can't replace judgment in 30 days. And those that are looking at AI, judgment is the most difficult attribute to replace with AI. Don't get me wrong, you can apply AI to your non-strategic and nominal accounts and set parameters based on your risk appetite, but not with things that really require judgment. One of the other things, of course, clearly AI can help with is transaction processing.
Yeah, Mike, I think one of the pieces that a lot of folks miss when they're thinking about, oh, I can just backfill the role is there's a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge in the credit field, and particularly in the senior credit executive. When a veteran walks out the door, that experience based on command of the business and lay of the land, that walks out the door. You can't replace it. It's not just the person. It's years and years and years of knowledge and knowledge that has context back into your particular business.
Yeah. Who pays late every Q4 is one of those examples. Who stretches when their inventory builds? Which customer needs a call versus a hard stop? Who has their ear to the ground and a plugged in network?
And you know what? None of that lives in a particular system, does it? And it is extremely difficult to replicate versus other roles, like we just said, maybe payroll or AP, those department heads, because it's a very scripted type of environment. Credit, collections, cash app may not be that defined. It's just not. It's the art and the science, and there's a lot of art that takes place here.
Yes, that knowledge lives in somebody's head. And when they leave, they don't even realize that you lost until something breaks after the fact. And some of the folks are there left to pick up the pieces.
And let's continue to move this one because I think there's so many areas that we could address. One is relationships, right? And relationships and what does it mean for the organization? A lot of times it means leverage. And the other piece executives underestimate is relationships. Those senior credit leaders have a full perspective on the organization, the risk appetite, and full understanding of leadership and the way they think, and established credit where credit is due based on historical success stories. Again, a lot of leverage is at these roles.
This is huge. Internal and external. You've got sales leaders, CFO, key customers. They could work a strategy knowing what information to share where and when. They really have the lay of the land down. Again, given a lot of the time that they've spent, and as they grew into their role, they knew how things worked and how things didn't work.
Like, I like to think about it sometimes in like a baseball game. And one particular position on the baseball team, the catcher. The catcher is the only person that sees the full field at any point in time. Similar to the role of a credit executive, right? They see the full field. They have the most relationships in the business. They probably talk to the customer as much, if not more, than some of the sales executive. And a seasoned credit leader can pick up on the field or the phone call and begin to influence the outcome of the game, or in this case, the outcome of the business piece or idea or transaction that they need to. And that's not policy. That's really having trust in this type of role. And you build trust by building relationships internally and externally to your business, just as the catcher builds those relationships and sees the entire field during a baseball game.
Matt, one could argue the catcher is subject to the most collisions in the game as well.
Very good
But
point, Mike.
yep. But trust doesn't really transfer. You don't inherit that. That's something that's earned over time. And we all know that having been in business. Trust is so important. And every day you have to be thinking about your actions and are your words equal to your actions? And
So
that's what people gauge over time.
they certainly do. And building those relationships is critical. So if you're a senior credit executive, I think one of the most important things you can do is not only build the external relationships with your customers, the CFOs, those folks, the COOs that you may be speaking with, but internally as well. And that ties back to decision making, right? So you have these relationships and you may need to make decisions under pressure. And that's where the gap really shows up, right? During pressure situations that are critical for your business.
It's always big orders, sales pushing really hard. And the customer is probably a little shaky. That's normally the MO for that credit professional to figure out how to get to yes.
And that's not always in a policy, is it, right? Your junior person may look at that type of situation and maybe freeze, maybe not understand how I can work through this because the policy isn't as defined because again, it's the art of the role. It's the situation that somebody needs to jump in on, the senior executive in this case.
Yeah, that senior person says, here's how we structure it. Here's how we mitigate it. Here's how we still get the deal done safely. And we got to yes.
So important. Let's again switch gears slightly. I want to jump into the critical truth. A deal isn't a sale, and this is important, I think, for individuals to explain and to communicate. Let's bring in the part that gets overlooked constantly, and I think that's this critical truth: a deal isn't a sale. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Oh, it's the simple truth, Matt. A deal isn't a sale unless it's paid. Said another way, a sale isn't a sale until it's paid. And we're hearing from some of the credit practitioners out there, they're getting a lot of pressure from the C suite and the executives to continue selling into what could potentially become a default and potential bad debt.
And Mike, I think you'd agree, right? Most organizations are wired the opposite way, aren't they? They're more focused on the deal than the close. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Top line obsessed. Revenue, bookings, growth. It's all about top line.
And then there's very little focus on the back end, right? The collectability, maybe the cash conversion of that deal, or the what's the risk adjusted revenue that they really have in this case. These pieces are expected to fall into place and happen, even in a high risk situation where a decision is made. It's overlooked about those pieces. Again, the collectability, the cash conversion on it, or the adjusted revenue that may be impacted to your organization.
Exactly. That credit person is the governor. While the sales team is celebrating, if there's a high pressure decision that was made that's not playing out well 6 months later, you're potentially writing some of it or all of it off.
You just may, right? And that's the why mitigation matters, right? When we think about risk, why mitigation is important here. And this is where the senior credit talent becomes extremely critical. They don't just say yes or no in a particular situation. They have other options.
They structure that deal, and I love to call it getting to yes in a thoughtful and strategic way to make a deal happen. And it's not always cutting terms or reducing a credit line. There's other ways behind the scenes that senior folks know how to do.
And not only that, they know how to do it in the context of what is important to their business and how they align with the goals and objectives, right? So they are thinking about terms, they're thinking about guarantees, they're thinking about credit limits, maybe payment plans that are out there, promotional items, insurance, but they're also taking that in context of what have they aligned to with their senior management, their senior executives for the goals and objectives of the organization, not just a particular transaction.
And going back to your baseball analogy, uh, you're at bats. You're not always going to get on base. And the senior team's always asking, how do we make this deal work and get paid? And that person, uh, a senior person in the position, knows what to do, right? They know when the curveball's coming or the knuckleball. But a new person can easily be overwhelmed by the pressure and ego pushing the sales. And this is a real tough one at all costs.
Yeah. And you know what? I define that's mitigation, right? The key to making a deal without jeopardizing an earnings miss or a major working capital shortfall or an inventory issue. They know how to take the big picture into place and they're ready for that knuckleball. They're ready for that curveball and they have a process and the mindset to solve it and get to yes.
And without it, you're not growing. You're just taking on risk disguised as revenue. And that's a really bad algorithm.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Hey, let's talk about some of the hidden costs that are out there of losing senior talent. Let's talk about what happens when that capability disappears. What are the issues?
And I think, Matt, you and I have been talking about this. We see this more and more as many folks transition either to other roles or they retire. And then you see it's subtle at first. Slightly looser decisions are being made, collections slow down, you start seeing an increase in disputes, and all those key metrics start to go maybe from green to a yellow.
Yeah, that inconsistency starts to compound, doesn't it? Right? It's almost exponential. Starts off slowly, it continues to build, and then it becomes impactful where maybe you're missing monthly revenue targets, collection targets, focus on what you have agreed to as an organization to go forward.
And then that needle moves from green to yellow to red. You start seeing the bad debt ticking up. Cash is slowing. You're getting pressure from Treasury on working capital. You've got sales and the credit friction, which then increases. And of course, they're going to try the new person. And then Treasury starts asking questions about working capital and free cash flow targets that are now at risk for the organization.
Yeah, and the next logical piece of that is, right, so you may move from treasury asking those questions to what about your senior leadership in your organization saying, what's changed? Why are things different? Why are we now concerned with write-offs, working capital, cash flow, communications? In essence, it's because there was a leadership change.
Yes, what changed is that person who knew how to manage risk, and they're gone. The lay of the land is still there, but the folks that have taken over just don't have the vision nor the experience to help.
Yeah, it's true, right? So, kind of moving it to the next logical step here, why hiring doesn't fix it quickly. And it's so you go hire someone new, and what happens?
Well, that's great on paper. They've got a strong background, but they don't know your business. They don't know the nuances.
Yeah, they don't, do they? And we see it on our end quite a bit, and we get questions from folks. And generally, I would say this: it takes at a minimum, 6 to 12 months to get a senior credit executive on board and fully operational because they got to know the business. And once they know the business, then they can start making the right decisions. They're going to build the network, et cetera. But it takes 6 to 12 months at a minimum to get to making some good decisions.
And it takes learning a system. There's multiple constituencies, unlike some of the other functions. So a new person's learning the customers, they're learning your sales culture and the risk tolerance of the organization, which again is judgmental, and it can ebb and flow depending on top line pressures. That's just one clear reason.
Yeah, and time's your competitor against those, isn't it? Right? Knowing your customers and your culture and the risk tolerance, time is against you. And by the time you get there, you probably already absorbed some of the impact out there. Again, correct cash flow, write-offs, et cetera. Just time's against you, right? As you get somebody onboarded and ready to go.
And got to think about, well, what do smart organizations do in these situations? Because it does happen. CRF is one great way to help indoctrinate new people, where you bring them together with a number of professionals that could then they could ask questions, in the hallway about what do you need to be doing, how do you handle things, and these smarter companies, they don't wait for these issues to happen, do they, Matt?
No, they don't. They certainly don't. Good, smart organizations, progressive organizations are thinking ahead and they certainly build bench strength. And a credit executive should also be thinking about the bench strength, what sits behind them. So there's a fill. They'll create documentation against frameworks of how the business runs. What are the protocols? What are the next steps? These are the pieces that are in place, and not only do they develop the documentation, they communicate it, they share it, they practice it. It involves credit strategy discussions, and we see this more and more these days where the credit executive is having a seat at the senior level of their business to talk about the strategy. What are the goals and objectives of the business? Not only today, but over the year, and they're done on a repetitive basis so nobody loses sight. They integrate credit into their strategy and planning. This is becoming more and more critical, not only from the credit side, we also see it from the procurement side these days. Procurement credit is on the rise. And it's about be a part of the process and have a seat at the table. Make sure that you are there communicating and aligning as an organization to those practices and those policies and those approaches. So as change happens, you have a smaller impact to your business.
And one of those ways, Matt, that you could show the importance of you and your team is recognizing that credit is truly a value driver, not a cost center. And you want to keep track of that working capital that you increased because you got some strategic customers paying better or on time, or where you were able to mitigate uh, millions of dollars because you knew that an account was going to go bad and you were able to work different ways to minimize the organization's overall exposure. I mean, those are the most important things that you want to keep track of, and on a quarterly basis, share it with the team and your executives so that they know the value that you create, especially in this environment. I don't think there's a day that's gone by in 2026 that I haven't seen a new bankruptcy.
Yeah. I always think of it this way. Nobody's going to market you, right? Nobody's doing your advertisement. So market yourself. Just as you said, share those impacts, those wins that you have. Make sure that they're visible. And the takeaways here pretty simple, right? Senior credit talent isn't interchangeable. They protect cash. They enable growth. That's critical. Enable growth and manage risk in ways that aren't always visible. And you need to make people aware of that and make sure you have the right relationships so that you can make people aware of it and they absorb it.
And you don't realize how critical that is until you try to replace it. You don't know what you got till it's gone. I think that was a famous song. Or worse, until those numbers remind you and your boss and the executives. In closing, revenue gets celebrated, cash gets ignored, and senior credit leaders are the bridge between the two. And that just doesn't get replaced overnight. So we hope that some of these points resonate with you and help you continue to drive your business forward and help you be the most effective and best credit leader that you can be.
Mike, great topic. Let's wrap it at this point and close it out. Anybody has any questions, reach out to us. Mike, myself, the foundation would be more than happy to help. And don't forget to like us out on YouTube and a number of other areas as well. Thanks for joining us on Where Credit is Due.
Thank you all.